just let everybody know that we're going to be recording as usual, so that we'll pass these on to Kevin for the BBIC website afterwards. Thanks for everybody coming. This is the 7th webinar in our series, and today we're going to be hearing from Stewart on the role of leadership at this point in the crisis, and why we all should be leaders rather than managers. I think most of you know Stewart. He's one of our senior guys and deals with leadership and sales and marketing and strategy at top level. So hopefully there's going to be an interesting hour and a half to 2 hours, and I'll hand you over to Stewart.
Thanks, Mike. Good afternoon, all. You can see some of you. Just to introduce a little bit about what we're going to do today. As you said, Mike said, it's a 7th of a series of webinars. We're always looking at topics we can use. But Mike, are you going to be hosting so you can field questions and things like that? I know I am as well. But
yeah, anybody if you want to raise your hand in a physical or a digital sense, I'll spot that, or put any questions in Q&A or chat. I'll pick them up and bring you in as appropriate. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. What we're going to cover today, ladies and gents, some key objectives that I want to get across and achieve. We're looking at the role of leadership and looking at how that relates to management and leadership behaviours, and also looking at your own leadership styles, creating some awareness about you and how you can apply different leadership styles in different places. It's a passion of mine, is leadership, and particularly over the last 2-3 months, I've seen varieties of styles and where people have dealt with the crisis, and I've been extremely impressed by what I've seen in lots of cases. So I'll be able to relate some of those examples to you. But it is about your own leadership style and the situation that we're in. There's will be key themes that I will look at. So leadership versus management, leadership styles, the here and now, trying to look at the certainly the next 3 months, and I've got a leadership list, tips on that list, which is a bit of a giveaway at the end. You know, if you want the presentation, I'll also send you that leadership tip list. So they're the key themes. These seminars, you know, we all are questioning it. I know the strategy one that you had last time, you know, we are looking at where you are now, any skills that you need, what you need help with, where you're going, and what do we need to be able to do. So there's the, we also want to learn a little bit, relearn a little bit, and in some cases unlearn a little bit. I said that leadership was a passion of mine. The list that I put up in front of me, I had a moment where I decided that for 12 months I was going to read a book every month, just to build my own personal knowledge, my personal development. And these are a few of the books that are on there. And I'll tell you what, it's harder than it sounds, reading a book every month for a year. It really, really is hard. But, you know, try it. It's for your own development and just recharging. It was a great experience. And these are some of the ones that are on there. The Truth About Leadership, Good to Great, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'll refer to that on a number of occasions in the presentation. It's one of my favourites. Leadership and Self-Deception is another one. The Age of Unreason, and the last one on that list, In Search of Excellence. To name but a few, but I'll refer to some of those as we go along, because that is about our personal development and not just not just coping in this crisis, but, you know, really working to develop ourselves. Leadership, to look at it and define it, just use the looking at the difference between leadership and management. Leadership, I thought I'd use Greek. I should have been in there next week on holiday, but that's another story. But anyway, leadership from an ancient Greek word meaning path maker, and management from the Greek word meaning path follower. It's just an interesting one to think about the different meanings of what they are. I've got a particular view about the two, and I'll explain that as we go along. So leadership is the outward expression of who we are. The image is who you want people to think you are. Your reputation is who people think you are, and your character is who you really are. Bit deep that for a Wednesday afternoon, but when you pick the bits out of it, it really is a lot about what leadership is about. Couple of quotes just to get our minds thinking. Time does not change things. With courage and initiative, the leaders do. If your actions inspire you to dream more, learn more and do more and become more, you are a leader. No such thing as poor troops, only poor leaders. Anybody got a view on that one? The last one, Sir John Harvey Jones, your favourite consultant, Mike, that you try and emulate.
Yeah, I'm a poor man's John Harvey Jones, people keep telling me. But, well, I've just been turning around because you mentioned earlier on about Tom Peters. Yeah. And I'll look at the screen. Yeah, I've got Tom Peters' book, and another one, Crazy Times Call for Crazy Organisations.
Oh, yeah.
And
Brian's got the Stephen Covey there as well.
Yeah, so they're all there, and yeah, I think a lot of what these people have said over the years, Tom Peters.
We've all got him, haven't we?
Yeah.
Hey, hold on, Kevin.
Yeah.
You've got to read them, of course.
I know.
Well, coming back to the holidays, I normally do my reading while I'm laid on a beach or at the side of a pool, so I'm not going to get much reading done this year.
Okay, yeah, likewise. So just before we go any further, I can't see everybody, but leader manager. Just as a quick question. If you think you're a leader, just put your hand up. If you think you're a leader. Leader, how many leaders have we got, Mike? Can you see everybody? Mike, you're muted. Mike, unmute yourself.
Sorry, we've got 3 leaders.
3 leaders, okay. Yeah. Managers, how many managers? Put your hands up.
No, we ain't got any managers. So we've got 3 leaders.
No managers.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? Everybody's leading. Nobody managing. Interesting. Yeah, the split, and when we look at what that means, if we look at the manager and the leader, these are up for debate. These are flash headline of the manager. Administers, is a copy, keeps the systems, focus on systems and control. Sometimes short range view, accepts the status quo. Eye on the bottom line, does the right thing. He's trained, is well trained normally. The leader innovates, is original, develops, focuses on people, inspires trust, eye on the horizon and challenges the status quo, constantly learns. And if you look at that and you think, blimey, the split on manager and leader, and then the question that I asked about Sir John Harvey Jones, there are no things as poor troops, just poor leaders, it starts to get me thinking about leadership, and that really, whether it's manager or leader, we certainly should have leadership at all levels. And if we have it at all levels, then we're not missing out on people challenging the status quo. Somebody been innovative, somebody been entrepreneurial. We need that at all levels. And so, yes, the control is important. That maintaining the status quo is key to get things done as a manager. But I really do think, in my opinion, that we should encourage leadership at all levels. And one of my definitions of a leader is that a really true leader has the ability to recognise potential in others, and make sure that potential is realised, even if that means that person passes them in the system, in the business, in the company. Real true leadership, getting the best and maximising people, is what it's about. So leadership sets direction, aligns people, motivates and inspires. Management plans, organises and controls. As I said, we've got to make sure we've got the environment that encourages both elements. Leaders do the right things, managers do things right. So, setting direction, inspiring people to follow them, creating trust. There's a few things that we all fear in life, and when we think about those and look at what's on them, we change, fear of the future, outsiders, fear of death, even. We have got that common thing, and this is where the leader gets us to the point where reassures, gets people inspired. Manager plans and organises. So, effective leaders have vision, integrity, belief in people, competence, good level of competence in what they do, a contagious attitude, and are inspirational. I think I'm probably the only person that would dare put a picture of Margaret Thatcher on here. Being from Barnsley and all my family being a mining family, I think I'd have been in deep trouble. But I put her on there because she brought Barnsley entrepreneurship and enterprise, and for that, I know for a fact that some of the people that I know in business that came out of the mining industry would have never had the chance to demonstrate such ability as leaders and as entrepreneurs and business owners in our community. So we've got some key poles to our tent here, and capability we just mentioned. The ability to lead change is pretty critical. Focus on results. I was talking to somebody about teams last week and how they become dysfunctional, particularly if they don't have an attention to results, and if they've got an inattention to results, it can be an element of a dysfunctional team. So focus on results. It's pretty important. John Adair puts a very simple model out about the demands of a leader, and it's a bit of a tough one. We've got the task to achieve, we've got to develop the individual, we've got to build the team at the same time. That's what leadership's about. I think it's a simple model, but it's a good model that helps us to think about leadership and our role and our style within our business, or how we manage our teams.
Stuart, do you think that sort of has got an analogy for a Premiership manager? So in football, so the Premiership managers have to develop the individuals, but kind of build the team. But if they don't achieve the task, then they're out. So is that a good one to use at that point?
It is around leadership, and particularly with strategic leadership as well. I mean, one book that's not on that list that I read was the latest Sir Alex Ferguson's book on leadership, and he talks about Archie Knox coming from to join him at Aberdeen before they'd won anything in particular, and he employed him as a coach, and he came into the club and was only there for about a month and decided to resign, and told Ferguson that he was going to resign from his role as the coach. And Ferguson says, "Well, why? We're doing so well. Everything seems to be going smoothly." And he said, "Well, what did you employ me to do?" He said, "Well, to coach." And he says, "Who's doing all coaching?" And it was a light bulb moment for Ferguson, that he needed to be more than just the coach. So it wasn't just about developing the individual. It was about building the team, looking at this overall strategy, which would eventually result in achieving the task. And he didn't do bad at that. He won about 28 trophies. So yeah, it's a good one, Mike.
I'm thinking about whether you might like Don Revie at Leeds or.
No, we can't really speak about things like that on air. And it's dirty Leeds, please, if you're going to say anything. Deary me. I've been watching some of the old football games and what have you that's been on over lockdown, and they don't show many of Leeds, only brutal ones. So kicking and fighting.
I don't think there were any others, were there?
No. So yeah, it's a good example. So being a great leader means being loyal to those that depend on them, the team. To those, the organisation, having some integrity is massive. The word integrity, somebody just wanted to come in, Mike. Shall I admit him? Having integrity. I was talking to people last week about communication, and there were a group of health ministers, and I think it was the health minister for New Zealand, who talked about giving messages with integrity. And that's a real element of leadership that's important. The messages we give, doing the right thing. It's pointless giving messages out as a leader and then doing something else. We've got to have the integrity to see and live by what we do. So integrity is really important. Consistency and uncompromising values. Talk about values later on, but there's lots of HR specialists will talk to you about values, but quite often people have a list as long as your arm. They don't know how to embed those values into the culture of the organisation or the business, and it's lost, and then people wonder why the values disappear. So showing great integrity, and another word there, trust. Being consistent, making decisions based on facts and whims, not just to impress or please. We all think of people that have been really good managers and really good leaders, and it always impressed me, the people that can think and be consistent and make decisions. Decisions are not always the right decisions, but the fact that that people will think it through, have a decision-making process that is consistent and helpful. So not showing no favoritism when dealing with people. not changing your view without really good reason. Being trustworthy is another attribute. Big one coming up, commitment. In my view, most important quality, being able to commit and see things through. Dedication, reminding people, some devotion towards the cause of what we're doing. Perseverance and determination. I've got a great slide to show you later on in the I don't know whether anybody's watched it, but I've been absolutely blown away by the story of the SAS that's been on during lockdown, in particular Sir David Stirling, who's the founder of the SAS, and how he talks about perseverance and determination, and plenty of things to back it up to prove it, and it's definitely worth a watch if you get a chance. See through tasks despite all difficulties. We've got a few of them at the moment, and seeing that drive and determination. I was talking to a client last week, and I've spent some time with him, just helping him through the lockdown and the closure of his factory and everything else. And you know, leadership's really stuck in his mind, and he's driven through to make a few things happen, see the task through. He's had to get a group of guys back out on site in a different country safely, and you know, it took real determination and perseverance to make that happen. And that's why I say the commitment is a massive attribute for a leader. Not being deflected or distracted, focused on achieving the task. We saw that with the John Adair model. Giving 100%, putting the team first. Really funny, not funny, but I was asked on a leadership workshop that I ran about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, about servient leadership and how that fits into the scheme of things in lockdown. And you know, giving 100% and putting the team first is about servient leadership, and you know, really being at the centre of what they expect. And as I looked through and looked at the different elements of that, you know, there's a lot of military examples around caring leadership and giving leadership with some of the military situations as well, which were interesting. But focusing on giving 100% to the team and the organisation. Dependability, reliability. Sometimes we've got to clear a mess up when things go wrong. Being there, being reliable every time we're needed. And again, going back to people that we've had as bosses, people that we've seen positive or not so positive. You know, the ones that are reliable, that safe pair of hands, when you do need them, they're there. And you know, being available, being accessible for people through this period as well is massive. I think I mentioned to you about the level of communication that some leaders have gone to make sure that they're in touch with their organisation, literally, where you know, personal numbers have been given to anybody that needs them so they can ring. One example, again, it was a factory where somebody had been furloughed, and they said, look, you know, I do this in the business now, but you know, I used to do that, and I could be a real help off furlough in the factory, utilising my knowledge and experience. You know, I don't want to be sat at home. I want to be part of what's happening, and that actually took place. And you know, being there, simply being there and helping throughout something like this resulted in, you know, somebody being motivated back to work throughout the furlough situation that they found themselves in. Confidence, giving praise, giving support for people. I've got a big view on support. I mean, support. When I say support, you know, we back people. Of course, we do when it's right and it's the right message. But we've also got to expect people to do the jobs. Back to the leadership and the task element and things like that. We've got to, you know, when I hear people say, you know, I haven't had enough support. I always tease the detail on that, because, you know, people have got to do the jobs as well. Yeah, we've got to be there and support and help, but people have got to do the jobs as well. That's standing by the team, giving that on the job, good feedback, reminder, kiss, kick, kiss. We're giving feedback on performance all the time. We should be, as leaders. The HR people that, I don't know if they've got any on today, but Kat and people like that, you know, they'll talk to you all day about performance reviews and things like that, which are wonderful. I really support them and endorse them. But as far as performance is concerned, I don't think performance review ever really improves performance, but direct, frank, often feedback on performance does change and improve performance, because it's in the here and now. So when we do that, you know, there's always something nice we can say about somebody, something positive. The kick is the bit that we need to change and bring around improvement on, and then, you know, we're finishing with a positive, another big kiss to send them on to make that improvement. So I think that's an important one. Ensure clear job roles, names and objectives are issued. Styles of leadership with objectives and goals, and people understanding that, I think, are important. They've got to know what's expected of them. What's expected of them? What are they going to contribute to the bigger picture, the bigger goal, the bigger strategy? And it's vital that we know, they know. Okay, Mike, you mentioned Tom Peters earlier, and waved the book about. I put the book on one of the lists, and this is what I mean about what I've seen in the last few months with different people. You know, great leaders rise to the occasion. You know, when they're really treating their employees well, and it's, you know, it's all about, you know, are we going to make the right decision in this situation? But it's not always about making, you know, great decisions now. You know, it's about taking care of your teams, making them feel safe, making them feel comfortable, making sure that, you know, that worry, wherever possible, can be allayed as a fear. As we said earlier, everybody has that fear of change and the future, what it's gonna bring. We've got to try and reassure them. And you know, I've talked about it, and you will be remembered for this. The way that you behave now, the people, your teams will remember it. And that is an actual quote from Tom Peters, who we mentioned earlier.
Just
Mike,
actually coming in there, Stuart, because, you know, we all think about it. It's not necessarily the decisions that are being made, but the behaviour. You just got to think about Dominic Cummings, haven't you? Whether you agree with what he's doing or not, but you know what he'll be remembered for going forward.
Yeah, and that, you know, that goes back to integrity as well, doesn't it? You know, the political discussion on it, you can have it as much as you want. Doing the right thing, you know, it's what you're remembered for. Any questions so far on what I've said? Any comments?
Nothing coming through on chat so far. If anybody wants to put anything on chat or put their hand up, and I'll bring them in.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So, thinking about crisis, what are the essential characteristics of crisis leader? We've looked at some of the characteristics already, and I think leaders fall into three types, and it lists it on here: strategic thinkers, the bigger picture, the overview, and the word strategy. Mike, I know you've done some workshops on strategy, and linking strategy to tactical planners. I mean, tactical planners, the translation of strategy into practical action plans and doing things is the hardest thing that leaders have to do. Translate strategy into operational plans. It's really, really difficult. And when we think about the crisis at the minute, the operational doers, the amount of leaders and people that I've spoke to said we have worked harder and longer than we ever have before. And from the outside, you're looking and you think, well, everything's stopped, hasn't it? It hasn't. It's amazing the people that have jumped onto this with tenacity and energy. The types of things that are listed on here in crisis leadership: courage and perseverance, credibility, leading the team. I mentioned to you about that, Sir David Sterling, team leadership, blimey. He took people into situations that just didn't make sense at times, but people went and followed and were led by him. And it's that setting the example. And to use him again, they had no training equipment in Africa at all, so they trained to jump out of planes by jumping out of trucks, and backwards out of trucks, and people just did it because he said this is the only way we're going to really get the reality in the situation right. But he jumped out at 40 and 50 miles an hour, just to show people that he was leading and would expect them to do only 30 miles an hour, but the people did it, and he's a real team leader and real understanding of the situation, and an incredible communicator. Decisiveness, we've mentioned that, and decisiveness, making decisions. Mike mentioned we don't always make the right ones, but the one that's on there, the emotional effectiveness as well. Being able to engage with people emotionally, emotional intelligence is critical in this crisis leadership. So truly authentic, that honesty, credibility, integrity, that comes from the inside. Sensitivity, demonstrating that compassion, impassive, to get dramatic and get overworked about it. Steadiness, must accommodate fatigue and retain responsive edge. Superior communicator, that's communication skills and those detailed plans, and having the vision and courage as essential characteristics. And you think about that in in small businesses and all the elements that we've spoke about, it's not quite as straightforward as that, isn't it, in a small business. Thinking of small business, what quite often we're challenged, and not always the qualified staff we need. Owners find it hard to delegate. We talk about delegation as leaders. Small business owners find that hard to give things away. Has to do lots of things for him or herself, and they're focusing on day to day, keeping the plates spinning, and it's frustrating because there might be 8 plates spinning, and you need to get back to the first one quickly because it's about to smash. And that's the challenges that we're faced with in small businesses, is keeping the plates spinning, and that's why we really got to look in to some of these basic things around the planning and development and looking at delegation. The one thing that jumps out in all this, the entrepreneurial flair and entrepreneurial leadership that I've seen is also interesting, and actually understanding about being prepared and planning for opportunities and change. And I read something about contingency planning and have a crisis plan. Blimey, I wonder how many people did have a contingency plan and a crisis plan for this. I'm not sure. Anybody come across it? Any evidence of it?
I'll come in. I mean, we've got 100 businesses on site.
Exactly.
I can't think of. I can probably think of half a dozen, perhaps, businesses that were prepared, but not for something of this enormity.
No.
I suppose it's worth saying that the government did have a crisis plan, and then they chose not to follow it.
Well,
there was a 2016 report on an epidemic.
Yeah, there were. Yeah.
That was a crisis plan.
Yeah, and it just shows about sharing plans, doesn't it? Because I know there were certain people. Sorry, I was just going to try and let Jamie in. There are certain people that didn't even know that the exercise or the plan had taken place. So it becomes extremely embarrassing when you didn't even know there was a plan, let alone an exercise that went through to look at contingency. But it's
brings
just
you back to authentic communication, doesn't it?
Yes, of course it does. Of course it does. And even if we just think worst case scenario, and that's not been negative, it's just having a fallback position, something that we can, because as Kevin said, there's no way that anybody could have been prepared for this that's happened. But having sort of plans for opportunities and change, and this is why, I mean, the BBIC Centre, this is why I love, the setup there, the business setup there, and how, we can see this entrepreneurial leadership, and people not always recognise that they've got it, but it's great to see it, and I see it there, see it in some of the other places in Barnsley, Digital Media Centre, real effort around entrepreneurship and that model. Working with partners, engaging that trust, and building teams. And building teams doesn't mean just your internal team, but your external team as well, the partners. And back to leadership and performance. And again, I was talking to somebody last week, and I said, we've got to Kevin, you were going to come in on something.
Yeah, I was just following up on your point, Stu. I think what we have seen, certainly on site at the BIC, is, as I say, there were probably half a dozen people who were very proactive and were prepared to some extent, but people have reacted really positively as well and led from the front in that respect. So of the 90 odd businesses that weren't prepared, they've all adapted very, very quickly and led their businesses very well, I think. There's probably half a dozen who have not done so, but in the main, people have been very, very professionally reactive. But it's a shame there weren't more that were prepared.
Yeah, and it's great to see. It's inspiring, isn't it? And
yeah, very much so.
Particularly in our community, even more so. Performance, zealous tenacity. Yeah, as I said, some people have said that they've worked harder and longer than they've ever worked before to get through it. I mean, I'm speaking to a business this afternoon as a favour, who's put in a situation where they've got some real decisions to make, despite the effort and work they've put in, because the reality is it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same for a while, and it's getting people to say, right, what does success look like now? What's it likely to look like, and how can we measure it? And if it means being in profit rather than making 30% profit in a forecasted record year, then that's what it'll be. But we've got to be realistic and make decisions to work towards that next level of performance. We've got to see it through. Got to see that through and make decisions around that to get us through to purpose, about service, and a broader purpose. There's a couple of slides that I've got later on, thinking about how we can actually work in different ways with customers. How we can, it says distinguishing service on there. Blimey, I preach to people now about having extraordinary service, not just excellent service, or it's got to be extraordinary now. We've got to move to the next level in this. This is going to be competitive, and if we're not extraordinary in what we do, then we're not going to win. Any comments on that?
Just one thing from our point of view, so it just kind of highlighted, the kind of distinguishing service. I noticed something on our website yesterday. I've already had a word with Dom about getting it changed. We put on proudly, we've got a 98% satisfaction rate.
Yeah.
And I think, what that really means is that out of every 10 people who, end of a project, we ask for a client satisfaction rating. Out of every 10 people, 8 of them are giving us 10s and 2 are giving us 9s.
Yeah.
And then I read that again and I thought, could somebody read that and think, actually, 2 in every 100 we upset and not satisfied with this. And that's not, so we're actually changing that wording on our website because it could be misinterpreted. But, we are trying to give that distinguishing service, something that sets us apart from everybody else. And that's what you've got to do when, particularly in these times, coming back from the survival mode that we've been in through into Revive. Giving that distinguishing service is going to be what sets you apart and gets you the work going forward.
Yeah, and that's why I use the word extraordinary. It's pretty crucial. I want to just quickly talk through some other leadership styles, just because we, as I said, coming out of this, we're gonna need you. We're gonna need you to really adapt and recognise your own leadership through this. I mean, some of the typical leadership styles that we're probably all familiar with, the autocratic leader, you know, the my way or the highway type attitude, driving businesses, driving teams, and you know, if you think the worst leader you've ever had, or the worst manager you've ever had, and you think about that dictatorial approach, the extreme of autocratic, and you think about that person, and you think, blimey, you know, that's the last thing I want to see. But you know, to be honest, sometimes we have to be autocratic. We've got to be autocratic. It's important that we recognise that, you know, it's not just about being liked. I mean, the democratic approach and the participative approach, but I couldn't say that again. Participative approach is really important. Of course, it is. But the extremes of both those, the extremes of democratic and autocratic, are things that we don't want. What we do want is to be able to use those leadership styles depending on the situation, depending on the person, depending on the relationship we have with that person, depending on how developed that person is. But we can't have extremes of the leadership styles, but we can have the leadership styles. But always just think about the go on, Mike, do you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to end when you the example I've got, I mean, this is a true example. I once had a boss who, when we were talking to him, you know, literally wagging his finger and saying, "I'm not having anybody tell me I'm autocratic."
Yeah.
True story.
Yeah, well, you know, it gives us a chance to reflect, doesn't it, about our experiences. And you know, I had a boss who didn't particularly like me. I don't understand why, but he didn't. And he was full of cliches, full of management cliches. And he used to say, you know, I have an open door policy. Yeah, he did, but nobody did walk through it because he was an ogre. And so, you know, having all the management and leadership spiel's one thing, but you've got to live it, haven't you? You've got to live that style. So yeah, so just have a think about it, you know, while you're watching your box sets or whatever you're doing. You know, what sort of leadership style do you have? What sort of leadership style do you think you should have? There's one that helps us a little bit here. This slide is about situational leadership, and this was brought together to really look at different styles and how developed team members were. And I think the best way to explain this, if you think about that hump on the slide, if you turn it upside down, it becomes a ravine. And if you go to, you imagine the top of the ravine, and say there's a new person starting in our business, and you would think somebody starting first day, the top of the ravine in terms of motivation, wanting to do well, wanting to achieve, and everything's up there, and so that person is ready for work, and they're in the job, you know, 2 to 3 weeks to a month, and things start to settle down a bit, but a few mistakes are made and things are gone. But we'd think that, you know, in the beginning, as a leader, we'd be using some quite directing style of leadership, where, you know, we've got supportive, low supportive behaviour, but very high directive, because we want them to know what to do, and so that directive style. All of a sudden, some mistakes are made, and they start to drop down the ravine a little bit to the bottom towards it. Confidence goes a little bit, and you know, we as leaders, then, you know, with this new person, this is where we can use different leadership styles, and this is where, you know, the supporting element and the coaching element comes in, because this person's got some skills, but we need to adopt some high supportive behaviour and some high directive behaviour. Bit of coaching, help them through, get them to a level of competence that you need for them to contribute to the success of the business. And that word supporting that I mentioned before, again, it's that's a high supportive behaviour, but low in terms of directive behaviour. helping them out of the bottom of the ravine and up the other side to get a level of competence. And, you know, again, it's all about that level of development that we've got and the styles that we can use. And that our aim as a leader is to release that potential, realise that potential, and get them to the other side of the ravine. And the ideal scenarios then is using D4, delegating, which is low on both supportive and directive behaviour, which means that we can do what we said earlier about the small business owner. We can delegate and enrich people's jobs by giving them something that they can do probably as well as you, and if not better. So situational leadership, it's a really good one to think about, right? You know, through all this, you know, what style can I use? And you know, there is actually a questionnaire you can do to find out what your preferred style is. And it's always interesting. I work with a lot of people in factories, warehousing environments, fabrication, things like that. And you know, what you ask people what they think they are, and what actually they are, and what others perceive them to be is often quite different. And it just gets them the chance to reflect a bit and say, right, you know, think about what I ought to be doing here. What sort of style and what sort of leadership approach should I take to this situation? And it depends. That's the key word: depends, depends, depends. So making the real difference. As leaders, let's make sure they know where they fit in, how they contribute, where the organisations are going. There's a Tony Blair story about when he went to visit NASA and had his 50p tour around NASA, and he bumped into a guy who was cleaning a certain area in the building, and he asked him and said, "What is your role here at NASA?" And it's a bit American, this, but you know, the guy replied and said, "I do what everybody else does. You know, I work to make sure we get people safely into space." And despite the fact that he was a cleaner, he wasn't just a cleaner. He was cleaning every particle, getting rid of every particle, so nothing could go into any of the equipment. And he didn't have to know how much fuel we tried to get to the moon and Mars and anywhere else. But he needed to know where he contributed and where he fits in. And that's important, that we make sure people understand where they contribute. Set high goals, don't compromise them. Again, high goals, there's got to be a link there to standards as well. High standards, don't compromise when we're making the difference. I mentioned about the kiss, kick, kiss, you know, giving feedback. We're not always, people aren't always on the right track, and it's difficult through this period. You know, I've said that I've been really impressed by some people in terms of leadership and running the businesses and the rest of it. I've also been disappointed with some people who have just disappeared to the point of, you know, virtually taking furlough to the nth degree, and you know, you start hearing business leaders, then business owners talking about who do we bring back and what's on the discussion. The first thing that's on the discussion is about how people have behaved and what they've done. Well, I'm not sure we want that sort of person back in our business. We're finding out a lot of this, and that's fact. So support people when they face difficult times. We've mentioned that, and make sure that people have opportunities to develop. I mentioned right at the beginning about development and the 12-book story. You know, learning and development as leaders. I've done 2 open university courses while I've been off. You know, it's amazing. You can surprise yourself what you can do, learn and pick up quickly. You have to develop and just be better at what you do. Don't let anybody abuse your staff. Why have I put that on? Because throughout this crisis, blimey, you know, different interpretations of what the government have said around working safely and following government guidelines, throughout the supply chain on particularly, for example, construction projects where people were, some were going back to work, some weren't going back to work. So there's been a real problem within the supply chain. So, if groundworks have been done and steel work's required, but the fabricators are not working and can't work, pressure then is applied, and it has been applied back through businesses. And don't let people abuse your staff if that happens, because it has happened. As a leader, we've got to say, look, these are the government guidelines. We're sticking to it, and we will work with you for a proper timeline on this. But again, I've been surprised at some of the behaviour that's come out. Listen, really listen. Be open to feedback yourself. The 360 feedback, dead easy way to do it. I think a simple stop, start, continue, consider. Ask people, and get them to put in what they think about you. What things you think you should stop doing because it's not very helpful or useful. What things you think you should continue doing because you're really good at it, and it's important that it continues. And consider doing. It's not always the right thing to do, but it might be in the future. So trust them. You give people responsibility. Reward them. Everybody thinks when you say reward them, give everybody a pay rise. Blimey, I have actually seen people get pay rises in this last 2 months. And I've seen people, wondering, blimey, how can one company be putting people on furlough and others can't? There's been opportunity for some, and that opportunity has to be taken. And rewarding people doesn't have to be financial. I suppose the point I'm making is, it's the thank you and the bits that we all say we do, but we don't do enough. I know that, because you'll speak to any leader, manager, and so I always say thank you and what a great job you've done. And then you speak to the teams below them and they say, never tells us out. It's few and far between. And it's not because we don't want to, it's we forget to, because we're focused and channeled into what we do and the function that we've got. So it's an important. So there's two elements of leadership that have really come out that have impressed me, that I've seen in this crisis. One is quiet leadership, and the other one is something called caring leadership. And I've seen it in abundance. Genuine care for people. And when I say quiet leadership, I'll give some examples in a minute. But helping people to shine, fulfill their potential. We see the world as we are, not as the world is. The one of the books that are on that front list is something called Quiet Leadership by David Rock. He talks about 6 steps to transforming performance at work, and it's all about questioning. It's all about involving people, and caring leadership. If you look where it sits, where that sits with, we mentioned servant leadership, authenticity is in there, that transformational leadership, relationship leadership. They're all interlinked, but the one that sits right behind is that caring leadership. Really authentic, really thinking about the teams, but being realistic, working on relationships, and being honest with people, and being able to influence people and set them up for the challenge that's ahead. Any comments? Caring and quiet leadership. Bit wordy, some of these slides, but it's mainly so you've got the presentation, you can play around with it and take the bits that you wanted. you want to do. I mentioned about Sir David Stirling earlier, and you know his tagline was for the SAS was about unrelenting pursuit of excellence, and I love it. I love that strap line, and you know he had very simple way to look at culture and values and that sort of thing, you know, and he basically said, you know, define it. Every organization, everybody needs to have a culture, and it's some of the behaviors between them that we need to get right. So define it, teach it, you let people understand it, you know, teach it, coach it, but make sure people understand what you mean. And then the last bit in there is, you know, to live it. And this is what I meant about the leading by example. And when I say leading by example, you know, I again, other management cliches where people say, I'd never ask anybody to do anything I won't do myself. Yes, you would, and yes, you should. But you know, in the main, yeah, let's lead by example. Of course, we do. You know, what's everything that has an impact of what you do as a leader. Leaders who build good cultures are the greatest examples of cultures themselves, and that's it. That's the picture of him there, the guy that I've rattled on about, but pretty impressive. So the Adair model that I talked about, part of that was working as one team. It's more important than ever to help each other, share expertise, and you know, I'm talking now about, you know, the wider group of BBIC as well. You know, sharing expertise, stay in touch, making sure that everybody's all right, and you know that you've got a chance of a good positive position. And Kevin, you know, what you said earlier about what people are doing, and all right, not perhaps as prepared. Not everybody is prepared, but you know, they're giving the companies a real chance coming out of the crisis with having that positive approach and positive attitude to everything.
Kevin's just put on chat for everybody about his blog post. So some of exactly what you've been talking about, Stewart, that maintaining employee well-being when working from home. So there's more about this on the BBIC website as well. Sorry, Business Village website.
I think just picking up on that, Mike, as well. I mean, I'm always looking for good material to blog about. So Stewart, we might well have a chat afterwards and maybe integrate some of this. I know it's on the website already, or it will be shortly as a video, but just to follow it up as a written piece perhaps might be useful.
Yeah, there's a few others that are on the presentation that we could do. We could do that with. I'd be happy to do that.
Excellent. Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Brian, I know I'm getting lots of nods from you about you know, the integration of the different leadership styles, and you and I both experienced Cranfield. So
yeah, exactly. And I suppose in a way, Cranfield is exactly where it came from. I mean, Cranfield was the first time I read this book.
Yeah.
And I, like you've said, you find something to do when you, particularly now. And my thing of now is, I better read that again and see if it reads different to it did the first time round.
Yeah.
I had to buy it again because that's the third one I've not given away. But no, I fully agree with you. The thing I'm slightly smiling about as work as one team is that I haven't heard any leaders say that anything different than use the opportunity that now is the change agent that you've been waiting for. So let's come out of this better. But the reality is half of them won't. By the law of averages, something's going to go wrong with half of the people who are trying to come out better, or everybody would be better, and that won't happen, will it?
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I read something else this morning about it was about consultancy and education, and you know, the comment was that coming out of this, this guy actually said, well, you know, we've jumped ahead 5 years in 3 months.
Mhm.
You know, with all this, you know, reality everywhere. See, we've jumped forward 5 years in 3 months, and so that, you know, that's the.
I suppose you could turn it backwards and say that it's actually a measure of leadership who does come out of this well.
Yeah, the adapting organisation, the adapting company, the one that adapts well. I'm jumping around a little bit because I've got cramp right in back of my thigh. Oh, I don't really get it, but it's murder. Okay, thanks, Brian. Put this on something that Mike's mentioned. I mentioned in the communication one about managing by wandering around. You know, we've got to really now look at different ways to do that, and virtually keep employers engaged. And that's going back to what Kevin was saying. You know, we need to look at as much as possible we can do that. You know, all the stuff around communicating, Skype, conference calls, and all that sort of stuff. The only thing I would say about that is, you know, with the calls, let's get some real structure to them, some particular focus. You know, what are the challenges? What do we need to do? Let's get something that is really structured. Yeah, it's great to, you know, the hello and keep in touch and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, structured calls with people, and you know, where things have gone well, you know, sharing some of the wins that we've had, you know, what's been achieved, feedback from clients, anything that we can use just to keep people motivated and morale going. And you know, you do talk to people, and it's been interesting for me because, I mean, people's circumstances change quickly as well. A civil engineer that I know, all of a sudden, you know, both at home, furloughed, 1-year-old child, not working from home, furloughed, and the next thing, you know, one of the partners, his wife, goes back to work, and you know, he's now in a situation where he's furloughed, but he's also full-time daddy daycare. His words, not mine. You know, blimey, you've got to take every situation and try and keep people going. Just on the communication, remember what we said about must know, should know, nice to know. When we are communicating things, there are certain things that we absolutely must let people know, because anything that people don't know, they tend to add bits on and make it up. You know, must know, should know, nice to know is a good rule of thumb, really. To just on that, quiet leadership, spend more time thinking about thinking, ask lots of questions, you know, listen for potential. And it's again, we found out a lot about different people throughout this 3-month period. A couple of things here just to remember. You know, they're working from one thing. You're at home during a crisis trying to work. It's a big difference. You know, the physical, mental, and emotional bit is really important. We take care of ourselves and others, because you know, there's been a lot of energy and a lot of time spent judging others and considering what they're doing and what you're not doing, and you know, just think about, you know, taking care of yours and what you're about, your business and your family, and you know, don't judge how you're coping based on how you see others coping. It just you know, it doesn't help. That slide's stuck for some reason. I mentioned about measuring success, and I said last time, I said earlier, you know, getting expectations in line with reality. You know, if the new goal is to be in profit or to survive, then, you know, get focused on that, you know, but get the expectations out on the table. What is the reality? What's the here and now? And you'll be surprised as well what the reality is. The reality feels completely different because of the pressure and the change and everything else. But, you know, get some hard facts down. Look at what the reality is. And when you get, I did this last week with a company, and when they actually looked at it, and you know, the not the doom and gloom, but the fear, you know, it just wasn't as bad as it seemed in the first part of the discussion. So you know, making decisions, talk to people, don't do it in isolation. Customers. You know, hopefully we had good relationships with them, but it's time to be the, you know, the helpful planners. Time to create ideas and you know, reintroduce the business and the services. We don't. I did something on selling about, I don't know, two months ago now, and you're talking about whether we should speak to people. Yeah, of course we should. We've got to. We've got to talk to our customers. So be the helpful planners and give that information. You know, what's happening in the market? What's, you know, who's starting work? I was talking to the company that's in the construction industry that I mentioned earlier. And so we've got to really think of the, you know, customers that we had orders with before we stopped, customers that we've quoted for before the work stopped, customers that are existing but don't fit into any of those, and then customers that are potential clients where there are opportunity. And we've got to identify what the opportunities are as well. And that tripod, that triangle of searching to see how we can fill capacity in the factory, capacity into the pipeline is important. It's a grind to go through it. But, you know, quote banks, anything like that you've got, let's throw them out on the table. This is the bit about the determination as leaders, driving it through, getting something done and being persistent. Just want to talk about a leadership style that I like, and it links leadership to strategy. So there are 5 elements to this, and I'll go through them briefly, but it's just a framework for you to think about. And you know, the first one is challenging the process, and as I said there about opportunities, seeking, challenging opportunities. We've got to do it as leaders, getting people to experiment, getting people to take risk, getting people to question the status quo. So effective leadership, challenge the process, the here and now, the status quo, not for the sake of it, but you know, the part of the innovation and entrepreneurship of being a business leader. You know, we've got to challenge the process and push the boundaries. Inspiring a shared vision, common vision, appealing to people and values, and you know, what people want, what they want to achieve. And you know, anybody that's unfamiliar with a vision, I'm surprised if they are, because we've talked about it. But you know, there are lots of very simple ones, and it's the end destination. You know, having the end in mind. One of the books, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, talks about having the end in mind. Where are we going? What's the journey? What's it about? And that helps you to make decisions and influences your decisions when you're making them. Having the end in mind and working towards that shared vision. Next one, enable others to act. This is really around strengthening, promoting, you know, co-working, getting people to take responsibility, sharing information, giving people the tools and things they need to act, enabling others to act. Good example of this, knowledge. People with knowledge in teams, small teams, in small companies. We've got to share knowledge as leaders. We've got to make sure we can enable others to do and act. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed monster is king. We've got to make sure that we give people the tools and information and knowledge to be able to act. Next one, modelling the way. Really, this is the lead by example, making sure that they believe in what you're saying, making sure that people can see it, and now, if you think, Mike, about the transition that Brook's made through this period, modelling the way, small wins, small wins have been massive for our team. Being able to get some small wins, because it's doable then, and Mike, without blowing sunshine, you've been able to do that. And all right, we're not earning bloody anything that we need to earn, but that modelling the way and those small wins have been massive.
I think, like you said there, Stuart, what we did, we got that vision of what we needed to do going forward, and then I got the team behind it. It's the kind of a dare thing that you were on about before, because we identified what the task was that we got to achieve. We developed the team, so all of us who were working on that going forward. All had to develop as individuals to get new skills going forward, but by then achieving the task and setting small ones. So we've done webinars with Enterprise in Barnsley, we've done them, this BBIC, we've done them with AMRC, we've done them with Chamber. So all of a sudden we're gaining traction, and now
Exactly.
We've got West Yorkshire that we've been doing this morning, Calderdale and Kirklees Manufacturing Alliance. So all these, and it all built in momentum. But if we went to take those small kind of baby steps to start with, we wouldn't have been able to make the bigger strides that we're now currently making with this program going forward.
Yeah.
And we had to get into it somewhere, and I think we followed the Adair model, of kind of setting what the vision was, achieving the task, developing a team, and developing the individuals within it.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I've followed our own medicine.
Absolutely. Last one is encourage the heart. Massive, important one. This is about recognition of individual contributions. That they've success they've made. The team accomplishments, recognizing it regularly. And again, newsletters and all that sort of stuff are fine, but there's nothing better than seeing the whites of somebody's eyes, and even though it is virtually, and telling people they've done a good job and giving them that feedback. And it's vital that we do it. Encourage the heart. So 5 practices of effective leadership. Again, good book. Research through that, what the research that went through to write that. People that use the practices more likely to be seen as an effective leader, meeting the job demands, representing the team, creating better teams, motivational levels up, reducing some of the measures on absenteeism and turnover rates and things like that. So really important. We mentioned about 7 habits of highly effective people earlier, and the whole basis of what he talks about is what you can control and what you can influence. And it's so poignant at the minute, what we can control and what we can influence, and that's what we've got as leaders. We've got to focus on. It's pointless focusing on things we cannot control. We really have got to just park them. We've got to park them for the time being because we can't control them. We can't influence them. Stephen Covey, who wrote that, had some guiding principles to it. I'm not going to go through every one, but I'm going to give you some examples of what he talked about. Again, very good book. Brian, if I'd known you, that's probably how I got my book, probably yours. So he came up with some private victories and some habits. And the first one was to be proactive. And as I said, I'll go through them, a couple of them as examples, but I'll just list them for the time being. Being proactive, beginning with the end in mind, putting first things first. Then he talked about the public victory, the outside, thinking about the win-win situations, understanding empathetic communication, synergize. Synergize is a combination of synergy and energy, and that's what synergize means. That's creative cooperation. And the last part is renewal, the sharpen the saw. The sharpen the saw one is about the personal development, the education, the mental strength, the emotional and spiritual development and renewal that we need. Being proactive, the reason why I've put this one on is because if there's anything else that we need to focus on at the minute is being as proactive as possible. We've got to be proactive. It's a habit that, don't wait. I talk to people about business development on this and being proactive. And if you're a small business, business development, do something every day. It don't matter how small, but be proactive and do something every day. Don't get caught later on with an empty pipeline. If we are reactive, we let the environment control us, and we want to be proactive, so we're controlling the environment. And also that also allows us to work in high value areas. And that's what we've got to really focus on, is being able to work in high value areas. I had a customer who was a sales director, and that sales director asked me if I'd do some coaching, some sales coaching. She didn't really need any sales coaching. She was fabulous at her job. But I went and spent half a day with her and sitting there listening to her and watching what was happening within this business. And, I said, I'll be honest with you when we finished. And she said, I want to do well. And I said, well, don't take the feedback too personally. And so I said to her, feedback time, you're not really a sales director. And she said, I'm a shareholder. And I said, I told you not to get offended when I said it. And my goodness, this person was, people were coming to ask her where the blue tack was. She was sat at a desk, and it was almost like somebody spraying a hose pipe directly in her face for all morning, and she just trying to batter away the water so she could see what was going on. And we just got to reorganise to be proactive and look at working in high-value areas. Working in high-value areas was her quote bank and the activity that she was really good at. Adjusting some of the processes and getting people to take some responsibility out of the day-to-day systems of the business allowed her to get back into that quote bank. And in 1 month, there was something like 2.75 million in that quote bank. And in 1 month, she put 500,000 on the order book. By being proactive and working in high-value areas, not doing everybody's job, being responsible for everything. As leaders, we can't be responsible for everybody and everything. So, being proactive, values. I'm just going to talk about these briefly, but being proactive means planning. So, and the easiest way at the moment is to look at 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. What are we going to be doing in that period? Let's get some things written down and done. And I talk about the values and being proactive, and you know, and I've put that on for a reason, because it's a good opportunity to think, right, what are we going to be like when we come out of the other side? And finding out about people as leaders is important. And you know, I've spoken a lot about values to senior people, and saying, you know, what do you want? What do you want it to be like in your business? You're leading it. What do you want it to be like? And coming up with things like, well, I want positive people. I want people to take some responsibility, not just me. I want some commitment to the goals and what we're trying to do. Somebody that's disciplined and well determined. And I've got some real will and determination to get through that, honesty and integrity. And you know, it's vital. And you know, I use these and think about these to say to people, recruit by these, give feedback on performance about these, give reference on them. And if you think about it, you know, I'll use Mike. I'm sure he won't mind. But you know, if somebody said to me, "What do you know about Mike Brook?" You know, he's applied for a job with us. What do you know about him? And if I could say, well, one thing about Mick, he's positive. You know, he takes responsibility for things, and he's accountable. He's happy to be accountable for stuff. He's always committed and disciplined, and he's got that will and determination to get over the line and get things done. And above all, I trust him. His integrity is second to none. Might you get that job, wouldn't you?
Sure would. Sure would. I was just looking for, where are we? Something to, you know, how.
You've muted yourself. Yeah, the 6 up there, but I mean, I'm very lucky to meet Richard Reed from Innocent Drinks years ago at an international trade conference. And I don't even know Innocent's the juice and smoothie people. They actually sold out to Coca-Cola, but you know, with the story's a long one. I won't bore you with it, but he used to run everything on the rule of 5. You know, 5 values, 5 objectives, 5 different processes, and you know, on the basis that most people can remember 3 to 5 things. Anything past that, people struggle. So this is why I said earlier, it's so hard to embed, you know, 10 values and what have you. But you know, think about what you want things to look like. Get this 30-60 day plan in your mind as you come out. And you know, back to you as leaders, and thinking about your part in all this. And you know, we've got to be a 10. We've got to step up here, and we've got to step up and be the best we can on every occasion. You know, and stick to it. You know, it's important. You know, if it's important enough, we'll find a way through it. You know, if it's not important enough, we'll find an excuse somehow and say, well, you know, it was the fault of that made it happen, not anything else. But so make sure you work in high value areas, and you know, focus on customer satisfaction, and you know, having that authentic customer focus. You know, and that self-awareness. One of the books that I mentioned, the you know, Leadership by Self-Deception, and we can all kid ourselves, and we all do it from time to time. We've got to really get rid of that, and have some real self-awareness, and know what the right thing is to do, and be that 10 every single time. Mentioned about having the end in mind, some clarity on the vision that we've got, the wheres and the targets, anything that we have to measure, but you know, have the end in mind. And again, it's a short-term thing, 30, 60, 90 days. You know, again, the example I gave before, get some reality to what's going to happen. The company that I mentioned, you know, forecast 32% net profit. You know, if they can make 1 penny profit after this, they will be delighted. But that self-awareness and realization and getting things in line with reality has helped them understand that, and you know, they're getting on with it. So have the end in mind. We all have, most people that work with us all know about Deming's model and the planning and the doing and checking, getting things done. is something to think about. Just on your personal control, putting first things first. As I said, these slides have the narrative on, which just give you some reference. I'm not going to read through them at all, but putting things first on those 30, 60, 90 days plan now, all the things that we know about, the machinery, materials, methods, anything that we can set in place to come out the other side is pretty important. This is a good opportunity to look at what you spend your time, those high value areas that I mentioned, little time matrix, the massive and important urgent things, and we spend our lives, or we seem to spend our lives a lot in pressing problems, deadlines, deadline driven projects and the rest of it, things that are really important and really urgent, but the thing that half the time creates the real urgency is that we don't spend enough time in quadrant 2, which quadrant 2 is about things that are really important but not urgent. And have a guess what are they? Planning, building relationships, looking at opportunities. They're the activities that stop you spending all your time in quadrant 1. So think about what's in quadrant 2. Think about the things that are important but not necessarily urgent. And the fact that we've got time at the minute to be able to do that gives us a good opportunity. It takes us, the other ones, again, I'll let you read those at your leisure, the time wasting ones. So remember, you plan your 30, your 60, your 90 day linked with those values. If you come out with anything on there, go on, Mike.
Yeah, one of the things on that previous slide was you just switch back to it, Stewart. Just on those, we said in the webinar last week on resetting the business that we like to think that we're good at all the quadrant 1 activities. So. And they're the things that kind of raise your profile, because you're good at solving problems and good at getting out of a crisis and sorting something out at the last minute. But actually, they're the things, as you've just said, that are preventing you from doing what you should be doing, which is the quadrant 2 things. And there might be a bit more low key, but they're the things that you need to be doing to stop the quadrant 1 activities from happening if you prevented them, or if you've got your planning in place so that you're not at a last minute kind of deadline to get stuff in. And I know I'm as bad as anybody. We were working on a tender last weekend, which some of you'll know about, that for a West Yorkshire project, and it got to be in by 10 o'clock on Monday morning, and we uploaded it, or I uploaded it Sunday night, so I weren't at the last minute, but I'd still had to work at the weekend to kind of get it all finished off. A bit more planning, and might not have had to work at the weekend, or if we hadn't have had quite so many crises last week and pressing problems, I'd have been able to do that stuff rather than get it done on the weekend.
Exactly.
But coming back onto this one. It was kind of you made some comments now on the next one that you're just going back onto the 30, 60, 90 plan, and it was just the analogy with sport again and playing sport. And although when I played rugby, I might not have been the best rugby player in the team, but I think and you might know some of the characters here, Stewart, from being around that area, but. My job, as being a big forward, weren't to be flashy or weren't to be, come up with the best kind of body swerve in the world. My job was to take, 3, 4, 5 of the opposition out with my runs when they got to stop me, so that your skillful players like Kerry Crossland and Deck French and people like that, they then got the space to operate in. But to do that, yeah, I've got to be positive. I've got to be responsible. I've got to be accountable. I've got to be doing my job. I've got to be committed because I knew every time I run in, the opposition were going to try and stop me somewhere. So you've got to have that discipline and will and determination. And at the end of the day, particularly in a sport like rugby league, you've got to have that honesty and integrity, for working with a team. So, the things that you learn, particularly in a sporting context as well, that I would say, contribute towards your listing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, good example. Appreciate that, Mike. Habit 4, win-win principle. Just thinking about mutual benefit. And I've seen this as well, again, through leaders that, really want to make things happen, getting things back moving, but properly and safely, and getting a win-win situation where nobody's disappointed. Back to the construction example that I gave, we've got to be realistic and honest and try and get a win-win situation for people coming out. So it's the better way, the lasting way. There's always a better way to. I think my dogs are attacking somebody. So think win-win. Habit 5. I put this habit in mainly because it's about empathetic communication, and keeping what he talked about was, get to know people. First seek to understand and then be understood. Empathetic communication. So how we speak to people and the situations that we're faced with at the minute, it's a big one. Synergize, I mentioned. It's about central leadership, getting the teams going, and the whole part is great. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Synergize, and again, it's been tricky to do that with some of the situations we've got. It's called teamwork. Sharpen the saw. It's the last habit. Things that we're doing now. It's about that, hard work and physically regenerating, socially, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. You never know. Have a go at the 12-book challenge. Not the what's the other challenges that have been going about last few weeks? Back to water bucket challenge and all sorts. Go for the 12-book challenge. It's drier. So some leadership management tips. One of the things that these the last few slides now, guys. One of the things that, as I said, as a giveaway from me, from Brook, is there's a comprehensive list of leadership and management tips that I'm quite happy to let you have if you want them. Send them on with if you just drop me an email or Mike an email. So these are just a couple of examples of them that come out. Tips around vision. Create visions that are simple, realistic, easy to inspire. Repeat the message. Balance short-term and long-term priorities. Clear vision. Good tips about vision and how to communicate them. What happens when things goes wrong as a leader? Mistakes and setbacks. Accept mistakes are inevitable. Be honest and take them as learning opportunities. Forgive everything except lack of effort. It's one thing that the effort. The Ferguson book that I read, he talks about effort and determination far more than ability and talent. Admit mistakes. Don't be afraid to go back to other decisions if you've made something that needs correcting. And look at failures as well as successes, please. It's important that we do both. Just one on morale, inspiration and morale, motivation. Create an atmosphere where people feel valued and trusted. Make sure that they know and where they fit. Set some goals, but make sure they're achievable and challenging. delegate decisions downwards, this enrichment that we talked about as a leader, and getting people involved and contributing to the bigger picture, and let them take risks if that needs to be. Recognise and celebrate success wherever you do. I said right at the beginning that I think there should be leadership at all levels, and I really do think that. And I mentioned about potential and enhancing potential, even if it means that people pass you. Great leaders quite often start as great followers. Think about your call for action. Think about what you want to do now. There's a chance for questions. That's the end of my presentation on leadership. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm quite happy to take any questions, and if anybody wants the slides or the giveaway leadership tips, I'm quite happy to send that on. But thanks for your time and contributions this afternoon.
Does anybody want to come in there? Anybody got any questions? You want to put your hand up and I'll bring you in. I think it's been a really kind of comprehensive look at leadership in general, and a couple of things. Kevin, you've got one there, but before that, I'm going to bring in Amanda first. She's been quiet all afternoon, so Amanda, let you go first if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sorry, I've got my screen blank, but my partner's been working in the office at the back of me, so yeah, so that's why I was on blank. But yeah, really good stuff there, Stuart. Just sort of wanted to share, we're just getting our business back up and running, so we're in our second week. And what I felt I had to do is, as well as sort of think about the customers, is think about the staff. We're a small business, and we'd essentially got about 70 jobs on hold, 70 new customers to ring over the period, and it was, a bit daunting as well. I recognise for people that it could be a bit daunting. We've not spoken to customers for a while, and we have kept them informed, but not actually speaking to customers.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of apprehension, I guess. So I made a decision, rather than go for a big bang and we're open now, is not to advertise it so we could deal with the customers that we've got, take some pressure off staff as well, so shorter working hours, having the phone lines closed to incoming calls so we could prioritise existing customers. And I think it's worked really well. So we've all gradually sort of got back into it and tried to support each other as well.
Yeah, and that's your 30, 60 days,
Yeah.
90-day plan, isn't it?
Yeah. So
excellent.
So it's our second week, and we're back to some normality, and things are looking good. Yeah. Brilliant.
And reality. It is reality. It's not the new normal. That new normal comment's frying me at the minute. I hear it all the time. It's just reality, isn't it? And doing what you've done, being proactive. One of the habits we talked about is, and you've got some structure to it, and that's excellent.
Thank you.
Kevin.
Sorry. One thing which Phil's just mentioned.
You put yourself back on mute, Mike.
Sorry, I just pulled up the Eisenhower matrix that Phil mentioned in chat. So they're the kind of important and non-important. I just think if I can get a better view on that for everybody, whether you
You're muted again, Mike. Still muted.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, that's the thing with Zoom. I found out if you go on to something else, it takes the control off. So when I'm pressing my space bar to unmute, it don't work when you're doing something else with your mouse. So sorry about that. But yeah, I was trying to just show on the flyer there that what Phil was talking about on the Eisenhower matrix, but unfortunately, like I say, I've not quite got the coordination to do it on the fly, and I was just trying to find something and put it up there. But
No worries.
it just reinforced what Stewart was saying. Do you want to say anything about that, Phil? No, right. But yeah, it just shows that we are watching this.
Kevin?
And then finally, or at the moment, with Kevin, you've got your hand up. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, mine was just if anybody's got any recommendations for books, I'm sort of running out of material. I mean, I'm halfway through that one. I've just finished that one, which is quite good. But if anybody's got anything else, Stuart, if you've done the 12 books, if you just send me your list, I'll have a look at it and see if there's
I'll
nothing.
send you the whole 12 because I think I only listed about 6 or 7 on there. I won't send you the whole 12 books.
No.
I'll send you the list.
Perfect.
That's how Brian ended up with none.
Then the other question was, what channel was that SAS program on that you mentioned earlier?
I think it was on BBC Two.
Okay,
it was
I'll find
fabulous.
that.
Absolutely fabulous.
And then my final one was, what leadership style assessment tool would you recommend?
Well, there's a few that you can use. The one on situational leadership is quite good, and it's quite short.
Okay.
And I can send you a copy of that if you want it.
Yeah, please.
And it just, they can be quite subjective because it asks you about what would you do, and sometimes you've only got a small team or you've only got one person, so it's difficult to ascertain what you would do. But yeah, I'll send you that one over for sure.
Thank you. Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you very much. Enjoyable. Thank you.
Any other questions? Anybody else want to come in at that point? We've got a couple of people in chat saying, yeah, thanks, and good refresher, and general comments. But if nobody's got anything burning that they want to ask at the moment, what I'll do, I'll draw the session to a close. I just want to admit a mistake, something that Stewart said earlier on, we should all do. Error with cut and paste from the previous email that I'd sent out about timing. It's Thursday this week, not Wednesday, for Kat's post-COVID HR webinar this week. It's not tomorrow, it's Thursday this week at 1 o'clock as usual, as the original plan. We've not rescheduled it. And then obviously next week we'll be having Stewart again, and then a roundup on next Thursday with becoming unconsciously competent and being able to thrive. So if that's
Mike, I'm just going to put on the chat the link to all the videos that are now going to be on our website specifically. So if everybody just wants that. That should all be there now. So all these events have been recorded. So there's a slideshow and there's the movie of the presentation as well. So they're all on that link, and they'll be updated as we complete the rest of the events.
Okay. What I'll do, I'll send that link out with the reminder for Thursdays as well, so everybody's got it, not just the ones who are on. But what I'd like to do is thank Stewart for the webinar this afternoon. That's been great.
Thanks.
I think, as Phil said, it's been a really good kind of reminder of all these techniques, everything we should be doing, and just remind people about Thursday and next week, and hope to see you all at the next editions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Cheers very much, Joe.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Bye.